Hello, everybody, friends, followers, and community of With Intentions Holistic Studio. My name is Regina, one of the co-founders and an artist as well, here today to hang out with some of the artists in our current exhibition, Spring Cleaning. And today we're going to have a roundtable discussion on finding your style. And what exactly is that? Well, it'll be a conversation among different artists about how they develop their style, what their style is, and if that's even a thing. So let's get into it. And for those that are rewatching this, feel free to move around, comment questions if you're going live, and we'll try to address them at the end. And otherwise, enjoy, and let's meet some of the artists that we have here today. Also, if you can't hear us or anything, feel free to comment any issues. If we're having any tech things going on, that would be helpful. And here we go. So first, I'm going to introduce Erin Kuhn. So Erin Kuhn, say hello.
Hello.
And Matt Becker, we have next to Erin. Hello, Matt. And we have next to Matt, Nikki Daviau.
Greetings, everybody.
Maybe congrats to someone, right?
Congrats for joining.
And Emily Gilman Beezley.
Hey everyone, great to see you.
As well as Taylor Piscopo.
Hello.
And say hi to Nicole. Hi, Nicole. So, we got to swing the other way. Hopefully I don't make anyone dizzy. All right, hopefully you can hear us all well. And what we're going to do now is just jump into a discussion about finding your style as an artist, as a creative, as a maker, whatever it is. So the first question that I have for our artists, and they're going to chime in as they like, is what is your style? In a word or two, what is your style? What is your art practice? What is your approach? Maybe it's 3 words, don't feel limited. Who's going to jump at it? All right, we're going to swing around to Nikki, who's going to tell us about her style as an artist.
Hello, everybody. I recently, in the past 3 years, have discovered my specific style, just a key handful of ingredients. And I would probably just stick with the fact that since I've had this big spiritual awakening and major shift in my life, I found healing through meditation, yoga, and the arts, and I'm learning a lot about Hindu teachings as well. And it's spoken to me in great depths, and so I've found inspiration to create my artwork from these little key principles. As far as my specific style, I would just stick with the basics of yoga figures, meditational figures, nature, patterns in nature, flowers. I'm all about flowers. And there's a lot of flowers that have a lot of healing powers. I feel like it's almost like an herbal remedies. There's lots of flowers that help create different energies. And so essentially, if you round all that up, that's basically where I stand. My figures have specific rainbow colors in them, and it represents the modern day color uses of chakras, of the 7 chakras. And I like to kind of flow that within the different skin tones that I create with the yoga figures, and I've called them beings of light. So that's just my beginning as an emerging artist of finding my style. Thank you.
I love it. Like all these little ingredients, I feel like it's like you've found this, you found the flowers, you found the beings, and it all comes together and creates what now is just this whole recipe for your signature style.
Right. And then eventually, I'll probably start doing, after the series I'm working on right now, I'll probably do a lot of experimental pieces, but kind of keeping the structure that I've been working with. So it'll be an interesting take. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Anybody want to piggyback that? I know we have some people in here who make pretty specifically spiritual work, whether you're doing, yoga figures like you mentioned or beings of light. I feel like I'm going to just swing around to some people. I think I am. Taylor. Tell me about your signature style, Taylor, or kind of your art practice, because I feel like you might relate a little bit there.
I do actually. Like everything that Nikki was saying, I felt like that's pretty much like the same like tune I'm on. So I just like pretty much have always been an artist, but I guess I kind of like discovered my style like maybe 7 years ago. I almost felt like I didn't even discover it, like it discovered me. Like I just started drawing pictures of, I guess, people from other planets. Like pretty much like, I guess people were saying they kind of like star seeds. But I pretty much immerse myself in nature, immerse myself in music, and that's where I really do get my inspiration from. I like go out in nature, and I found like these really cool mushrooms actually. They're like the hen of the woods. I'm sure people have heard of them. And that was like pretty much one of my first drawings, was this girl with these mushrooms coming out of her head. And so I just started going out in nature and just finding more things to like complement my art. And like the same thing with flowers, seashells, just like anything I can find that's like a floor treasure, I would just incorporate in my artwork pretty much. Yeah.
Aliens, nature,
Yeah,
and some hybrid creation from that. Love it. I feel like we have another artist in here who relates a lot to nature, at least the artwork that I'm familiar with over here of this beautiful mountain, which of course is part of nature. So, Matt, tell us a little bit about your style, your inspiration.
Well, yeah, I have to agree with all of them. I wouldn't say that I don't even really have a style. I think I'm just imitating all the things that I've seen. But like they also said, their spiritual practices informs, how they see. So if anything original comes out of me, I feel it's just the divine consciousness coming out of how I've conditioned myself to see through like my own consciousness and through like my own harping practices too. So like everything that I have going on and like all the artwork I do is channeled through my thoughts and impressions that come through my sadhana. That's like one way that I get a lot of inspiration. Another way I like to do things too is like I like to go get an espresso and read the scriptures, and then afterwards I do my impressions from the scriptures into like the sketchbook and stuff like that too, which helps inform, the artwork that I'm creating also. But like another trick that I use too is I like to make like a really hot bath at night too, full of like sea salts and stuff. And then I have like a little THC, and then like an orgasm, and then I lower myself into this really hot bath, and I light the candle, and I turn on some mantra, and I watch how the shadows play on like the rocks and the walls and stuff, and I get like visions and stuff through that too. So like all these things, are all just designed to create like a greater wave of infinite goodness in the consciousness. So that's what all the artwork does. It just kind of brings that infinite wave of consciousness out, and hopefully it inspires people to live more authentically or in a more intense mode of awareness.
Yeah, so rather than a particular style, it's really for you more about the process of that inspiration, that channeling, that connection.
Yeah, I hope that's what it does for everybody too. The product is like already gone. It means nothing. It's all, same with all of our experiences. This is the consciousness of infinite transformation, Now is already gone. We're already on to something else. So hopefully it inspires not people to just purchase objects, but to actually go out and create their own artwork and forage for mushrooms or dance or take pictures of foxes and stuff and recognize all this thing that's going around them instead of being static in some kind of, loop. Like who wants to live in the loop?
Right. Yeah, I feel like what I'm understanding is like a very visionary artist approach to your practice of, maybe stylistically different than something like an Alex Gray, but a really like art to raise consciousness, like very
Absolutely.
purposeful and intentional.
Yeah, it's serving the divine. I'm not the doer. I'm just letting it come through me, and hopefully it affects everybody else's consciousness and makes this world a better place.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Matt. I'm going to swing to Erin over here about your style. I think also we've talked before about your work in previous exhibitions. So I'm familiar, and those listening might be a little familiar with your work. But feel free to piggyback or expand on what we've talked about your work.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful how like spirituality has informed a lot of people's art here, and definitely meditation's a big part of my practice. I would say like my body of work, especially what I've been doing for the last few years, summed up as just like witchy goddesses and like bright colors, and I feel like I definitely I think meditation is a big part of that, but also just like studying mythology and then finding a way to relate to these goddesses and empowering myself through that too has been like a real big impact in my work lately. And some of the work that's in this show is my photography, which is very different than what I've shown here before, and a lot of it is like play. It's like going out in nature and playing, and like playing with toys and like little barnacles and things that I find, and like find the connection you have with found objects and the work that you create.
So I'm going to stay with you and maybe bounce to kind of some other questions I had in mind, because I feel like it's relating. So sometimes as artists, we might diverge from our typical style or diverge from our typical practice, maybe with a purpose, maybe not, maybe to play. Do you think your work that's in this show, the photography, as opposed to these current mythological paintings and mixed media that you're doing, is that a development? Was it a divergence, or two totally different things? What does it mean for you as an artist to diverge or develop your style?
Yeah, I think it can be really scary for artists to like diverge from what they do. I've been making art like seriously for a very long time too, and I think you also get stuck after a few years, and a practice that I think a lot of people enjoy is just like shaking it up and trying something new, or switching tools and having like a new tool. And when I left photography and went back into painting, I felt like I was just able to explore themes and also an aesthetic that was very different than my photography. So I worked in photography for over a decade. My degree was in photography, and I felt like the joy was waning a little bit, and I was really drawn to mixed media painting. So I don't know that I'll be in this forever either too. I think, at some point I might want to mix it up. I still do photography a lot. I don't share it because I do feel like sometimes it can get really difficult to show so many different types of art constantly too. Like, I think, we've touched on a little bit of like the idea of branding too, and sometimes I get really like, I feel limited by that. I do let it sort of influence that, all right now I'm just showing my paintings, but I am still creating photography on my own and just keeping it to myself, I guess.
Absolutely. But at the same time, you have to follow your heart sometimes, right? If you feel inspired to take photos, right? And maybe there'll be the time that you can show it, or maybe you'll break your own rules someday and show them all at the same time. Who knows, right?
I think I'm like finding right now collage is a way for me to bring my photos and paintings together. And so I've been doing, I think that's like where I'm moving into now too. And like getting to use the photography and the physical paint in one like digital media after is just working right now. So
yeah, I've been seeing your like digital collages a lot recently. Super cool. I'm going to swing now to Emily, because I feel like Emily's another artist that does work in a lot of different styles and subject matter,
Yes.
and you bounce around, actually, I feel like, kind of at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I really was relating to what you were talking about, where when you think about a brand, and if you follow a lot of art marketing blogs, they're always telling you it's better to really have one specific style and one specific medium and subject matter. And it does make your life easier. But having said that, I just feel that there's so much I want to express through my creativity that I just follow my passion. And if it means experimenting with mixed media and resin one day, and oil painting another day, and photography a different day, I'm happy to do that. I put it all out on my website. I do have some categories. And I find that everything does sell. It might be a different market, but I would encourage you to just do it. I mean, pursue your passion. Don't feel, for a while I was painting a lot of ballet dancers. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life painting ballet dancers. So I feel that's part of our evolution, and it's okay to be eclectic. But I do crack up because people say, well, once you establish your brand, it's okay to pivot. And then I think, well, I've been pivoting so long, I'm now pirouetting because I'm just like all over the place doing things. But I love it. So, yeah, go for it.
And you find that the people who enjoy and consume your work, they understand who you are as an artist, or like you said, maybe it's different markets, so maybe it doesn't matter if they do.
Honestly, I think they buy from you as a person. So art purchases tend to be discretionary. It's not like milk and eggs. So people fall in love with your art. They may fall in love with you and who you are as an artist. I think that is what really impels people to buy art. And sometimes it's the backstory behind the artwork. So it may be that vision of the mountain that you had, Taylor, or it may be, the witchy women, whatever it is. I think that could also be really helpful to people to understand, not just visually, well, that looks interesting, but like, oh, that's what that's all about. So I think that's important to have words behind your art, not just the art itself.
That's a really interesting comment from somebody who's listening. Someone, Duran, is commenting that he agrees. He says it's okay to have many styles and to expose them all. He personally likes the diversity of art, especially from one single individual. So there we have it from someone who is an art appreciator themselves, that seeing that diversity for that person is really appreciated. And Travis is adding that, art is an expression and should never be limited. And unfortunately, we just touched on with the world of branding and marketing and Instagram that sometimes we do limit ourselves. Does anyone want to jump on that? How do we feel about branding ourselves as creatives? I see a hand over here. Nikki, jump on that. Anybody else who wants to chime in, we'll get to you.
I don't know. As far as like branding, well, I mean, I think the journey is different for every artist, right? So like you come into like different passions at different parts of your life during your path, right? Like, so I have these paintings here that I did when I was in college. I was very inspired by dance and the passion of dance when you have the music and the partner dancing and the excitement of competition. But then, as I've gotten older, I think I've started focusing on more within, and that's where I've become to find that I had an inspiration from a specific artist who is actually based out of London, England right now. And she does a lot of the similar like yoga figures, yoga work, and she definitely has a very specific brand and style. She's very successful. She's done, her name's Hannah Adamzek. I've used kind of her as a motive for my branding, but what I've also come to realize recently, while working on this series is that there needs to be like a serious yin-yang of like this balance of your branding, but then like giving yourself that creative freedom to really explore the other things that you can come into too that may eventually kind of grow and bring forward your brand even more. You know what I mean? And I think that like the beauty of it is that like some people might not have a brand, but they just have the inner voice that speaks to them to just keep doing it and continuing it. And I think that is probably more important than having a specific brand all the time, is just giving yourself that time and giving yourself that space to just constantly create. Because I feel like that often can be a huge setback with a lot of artists. Sometimes we just wake up and we're not, on point that day. We feel like we need to take a break, and having that discipline to go in and say, okay, every day I need to do something for my practice, even if it's just like a 15-minute sketch, something, you know what I mean? And I think that, like I said, the journey's different for everybody. So it's really fascinating to see it's different. The differences with all these other local artists too. And I think it's great to have these communities and these discussions because we learn more about ourselves through others as well. So it's like our village, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. And I think, when you're working within this within communities, within people who fall in love with you as the artist, as you as the person, then the branding and all that's secondary. That's so secondary and superficial in many ways. But I don't know, maybe someone disagrees, or maybe someone wants to add to that. Anybody want to chime in on branding or marketing or something? Let's go for it.
Well, I think, it's like what Pharoah Sanders says with his saxophone. You gotta have freedom. Like, who wants to be limited, you know? Especially in this consciousness of infinite transformation. And like Emily was saying, like our connections to like the artwork, like this one right here, like Arunachala, like one of the holy pilgrimages of Lord Shiva. I've never been to this mountain, but for the 6 weeks I spent painting it, I was on pilgrimage to that mountain, like in there, and I was like totally consumed with it in my consciousness. But like anything else, you go there and you leave. It makes its impression, and then you take it and bring it somewhere else in life. But this style here I was working in this style like 15 years ago, and I just revisited it just for this painting right here. Nowadays, I'm working totally different. I'm like building panels out of like recycled pallets, and the imagery I'm using is totally different from here. It's kind of more iconographic and a little more literal and narrative in its message. So, I think that says a lot about us, who we are as people too. If we're stuck in branding ourselves, are we also branding ourselves with our relationships too, with ourselves and with the people around us? How many people stay in like worn out relationships that they don't want to change? How many people are treating their raised children like they're little children? I'm not the same father to my 5-year-old that he was, I'm not treating him like that now when he's like 16 now. How lame would that be? I gotta be a different man. So that's all part of the artistic process, and like I said, it's not so much about the product. I hope the product, inspires people to do more with themselves and explore their own self. It's like Nikki said, if you don't know yourself a little bit better, or the artwork doesn't change you, or the relationships you're in doesn't change you, was it even a relationship? Or you're just stuck in the loop.
I think that's an important point in what is your goal for your art, because if your goal is merchandising or selling, then maybe you would feel a little bit differently, as opposed to to maybe you want to take your viewers on a spiritual journey, and you don't care if you ever make money out of it. So I think there's that balance. Well, so there you go. I mean, so, you know, there's a balance because there's a business side to art, and you can choose to accept that, or you can disregard it and just follow your dreams and your passions, and maybe you'll make money, maybe you won't. But when you talk about branding, it really does help if you have a consistent brand, and certainly on social media with curators, that is a great way to market your art. So, I mean, I don't do that strategy, but that's not to say it's not a valid strategy. It's completely legitimate. I think that's how most artists are successful, if success is money.
I agree.
Yeah, to add to that, because I think those are both really important points with it. And I try to make my entire living with my art, and I did try to create like 2 separate Instagram accounts kind of thing, so that my art that's like geared to children doesn't have like all of the nudity that I have in my other art, and like I just, you know, I had everything super branded. When you go to a page, it all, you know, is a color flow and everything, and it was like, it takes so much energy when you're creating these pieces, and when you like you know, clear your head and you channel and everything, and you create this work, and then you're also adding time that you can try different media that you haven't done and explore different tools, and then to add the entire marketing aspect, which is a full-time career for other people on top of it as an artist, it is definitely like a struggle, and it's you know, it's something that you have to juggle. I ended up like abandoning one of those accounts, not officially, and I might revisit it one day, but I find that like you just have to be true to your energy too, and I do think it's it is nice that when, you know, I feel good about at least one of my pages that I've worked so hard on to make all of, you know, a really considerate flow with the work, and make it easy for people to glance at it and see what I'm about, and see, you know, something cursory just from going to it. But I think it's just, it can be so exhausting and taxing to then, you know, be true to yourself with your other visions too, and then create a side job and a side job and a side job. So
Right, you can make a job out of it. That's so true. But to an extent, also, when you're branding yourself, I like what you just said, because it's also an opportunity to tell your story. And I think, you know, we could call it branding, or you could call it contextualizing too. I think in some ways it's very important to tell the world who you are as an artist, what your intention is, or how all of these visions connect after you've done them and you're reflecting on it. So there can be a really beautiful kind of aspect of, maybe we won't call it branding or marketing or, you know, defining what you do, just because it does invite people to understand. And if our goals are to communicate with people, to inspire them, a little context doesn't hurt. I kind of want to flip to Taylor over here as an artist that I don't know you so well as an artist, but I don't think you do it necessarily as your full-time job. So how do you approach branding, marketing? Does it matter?
To be honest, I don't really have any experience of branding myself with art yet. I would like to. I just haven't personally. I think I also come from like the same perspective as, like, I just kind of do it to like release like my own feelings pretty much. It's also something where, like, I'd hope that, I guess maybe my process might be that people would maybe feel something from my artwork, like a feeling that they're kind of in need of. And I have to say, when I do look at this painting, like, when I look at your painting, Matt, like, I really feel, I can't stop looking at it. Like, I feel so centered and kind of grounded, actually, and it's making me feel just like something I'm kind of in need of in a way. So like, I guess like for me, like I you know, one day I do hope to make this into like my main job, but at the moment I have not. No. But,
so maybe you need to do a little branding.
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting. You're touching on a point of that Emily brought up earlier, of defining what success for yourself as a person, as an artist, is essential to then walking your path. Because if you make it a goal of inspiring people or, you know, raising consciousness, then you're defining your own success, your own worthiness as a maker, as a channel, as an artist. But if you want to define it as money, then yeah, it's a whole different game, a whole different modifier of your success. Duran is chiming in again about this idea of success. Success is money is probably the hardest thing for an artist to say, but it is a way where their hard work is appreciated and it also sustains their passion. So that's an interesting, yeah, does someone have a comment on that? Or we're just going, yes, yeah.
I like to.
Yeah, no, I agree, right? Like
I'm in church or something. No,
that's right. Can I get a...
Yeah, for the record, you know, I'm all for making money. So buy that painting.
Right, in fact, all of this is for sale for those who are watching, because...
You guys could brand me if you want.
And that's a great point, right? Sometimes someone brought up curators earlier. You know, we as artists also are the makers, and sometimes we have to wear the hat of the curator, of the agent, of the gallerist, of the dealer, and then maybe you get to a point where you don't have to play those roles because you have someone else doing it for you. Wouldn't that be nice? So yeah, maybe for some of us, we're just unconcerned with being branded, and maybe we will never have to be concerned because someone can do it for us, and why not? Let them. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, some of us, but I want to kind of swing back to who we are as artists and what we make, and maybe why and from where. So a lot of us are inspired by nature, you know, a lot of us, most of us, I feel like. But also we do look at other artists. We do look at other art, I would think, as artists and as art appreciators. So who are you guys looking at? Who are you inspired by that said to you, oh, this makes me want to become an artist, right? Or this made me want to go to this style. Nikki, you touched on an artist that you're really inspired by. Is anyone else really drawn to a particular artist or art movement? Or maybe it's a totally different modality. Maybe it really is just nature and you don't actually want to or look at any art.
Yeah, I'm totally into like all of my friends. Like I'm super blessed that like even back through high school, like dudes that I knew then that I'm still hanging out with, and I'm still watching them make art and stuff like that. Like all around me, Mike Shepard, Rich Calley, Robert Ryan, Colin Holloway, all these dudes like I grew up with, and I'm watching their styles grow and their consciousness expand and sometimes shrink and transform. And I just always consider myself blessed to have like the community of people around me. I don't really know too many famous people, but my friends are like totally famous in my head.
And if they aren't our followers, now you know their names.
Yeah, like all them dudes.
Oh, great. So really, yeah, for you, it's really the community of artists, your peers.
Yeah, it makes more sense to me because this is where we're living, and this is the life we're all dealing with right here and right now. So it's all like really relatable, you know, all the things we're all going through, the joys, the pains, the trials, the tribulations, the congratulations, you know. We're all here just to celebrate all that stuff. So just to watch them all moving through their lives and continually making art along the way, and not just, you know, paintings and visual arts, but also music and, you know, writing and raising their families and, you know, creating gardens and stuff. That's all inspiring.
I was going to ask, actually, because I was wondering if the people you referenced are other painters or visual artists, and kind of the reverse side to that of, do you ever feel, not in a, it seems like you're saying it's a very supportive community kind of world that you and these other creatives are in, but is there ever elements of competition or kind of, oh, you're looking at mine, I'm looking at yours, or
yeah, inspiration all the time. I feel like we all feed off of each other too. You know, maybe not like directly, but somewhere like 2 years later, you see one of, you know, their styles pop up in their paintings or something
But you embrace it.
I embrace it.
Yeah, cool.
100%.
Cool. Well, whether famous artists or fellow artists, anybody else want to chime in on that? Yeah, Erin.
During, I guess, quarantine in the beginning, I met a collage group, Vision Coven, and so many of the members are actually in the show. Tolly and Kelly are in it, and you know, so I've had a lot of friends. I went to art school, and there would be moments of like, you think everybody's collaborating and stuff, and like little moments where people's egos pop up, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever really like be open to collaboration after maybe some negative experiences when I was a teenager. And then this summer I met this group of people who are, they just love collage, and they love like sharing it with everyone and making it accessible, and everyone has totally different styles too, so it was such a beautiful thing. I ended up collaborating with Tolly at our last exhibit here on the reception night, and Dark Reconstruction and I are collaborating on a piece based from that show too. So like it's just like opened my world so much more to have a community of artists that you actually see that you're contemporaries, and there's no ego. It's just positivity. It's supporting each other. It's, you know, having somebody to bounce an idea off of and like get feedback that you can trust, you know. So it's been really and inspiring. It's like you know, you're proud of your friends, you're happy for them when they're doing well, so it's been really good.
I just love hearing this stuff, because I will say, you know, I've had some beautiful experiences like you guys have mentioned, and I think especially now in the community I've placed myself in. But I will say, coming from some of the other art worlds, art school, there were some negative experiences, lots of ego coming up and accusations and all that. And to be able to work in a community like the ones that you're talking about, to me, is so beautiful. What a gift.
It is a gift, yeah.
I just want to say I have noticed that, I mean, being an art student in college and going to the city and being involved in the artworks in the city and kind of meeting some emerging artists in New York City, and then there's the spiritual art realm. I feel like it's kind of two totally different vibes, and there really is a lack of ego in the spirituality realm, like art realm, and I feel like that kind of presents more of an opportunity of growth, because you're not thinking about, oh, well, should I say this? Because then you feel like maybe a little intimidated, maybe there's a lot more judgment going on, and I feel like when you have these open discussions with these artists who really do mean well and come from a very open heart space, that is where the true growth comes from. And that's when I realized, like, this is the realm as an artist I want to grow and be in. And even if, you know, like, I know I have a small brand coming up and emerging, but even though I have a brand, you know, I'm like excited to hear everybody else's story and where it comes from. And that is the key, is to be able to have these connections even though we come from these different walks of our experiences. So I just wanted to say that real quick.
Right. Virtual hugs to all of that. So mostly then we've been talking about peers and contemporaries and our direct community, whether they're making visual art or making gardens, which I think, you know, any creative thing or any action that we do as humans can be inspiring, I'm sure. Any of you guys have any artists that you've been related to or relate to that you might not even know, and how has that impacted your work? Yes, Emily.
So I'll just say, with the pieces that I have in this show, a lot of people have told me that they remind them of Marc Chagall, which I take as a very big compliment. I'm a huge fan of his work. I've gone to many exhibits where he's been featured. And so from a famous artist, I would say that's probably the one I get compared to the most. But then, you know, because I do ballet, people will say, oh, it's Degas. Well, it's really not, because it's completely a different style, but the subject matter may be similar. Or if I do sunflowers, oh, that's Van Gogh. Well, it's not Van Gogh if I'm not using a big impasto base to it and I have a different color palette. And so it's a little tricky. You know, you want to be really authentic, and you want to encourage your just want to be authentic to yourself. So I feel like there's a little bit of maybe like a yin and a yang with that. I love to get feedback, so I do want to encourage it. But sometimes when people talk about my artwork, you're just like really scratching your head, like, wow.
That's an interesting point. I didn't have this question in mind, but it brings up this to me. Has feedback, or whether you're being referenced, or an artist is being referenced for you, or someone just gave you feedback, did that ever change the way that you work, change the way you view your work, affect you in a way? I think often, we don't live in bubbles, and we don't make art in bubbles either. And whether it's the marketing aspect of being an artist, or whether it's literally the art appreciation aspect of being an artist, it can actually affect our making. I think we see in the history of art so many famous artists who did get branded or did get such success early in their career, and it's been noted as perhaps their downfall because it got to their head or it pigeonholed them. Has feedback of about any of your work, maybe positively or maybe not so, impacted how you make, or maybe not?
I mean, a lot of feedback to me is helpful and useful. It's just good to hear what people think and feel about your art. But then, if you're talking about galleries and exhibits and juried shows, then it's a whole different ballgame. And then the feedback can really go wonky because you can see that artwork that gets prized, let's say, in these juried shows, like who wins the best in show, and sometimes it just seems like so disconnected. So I do feel in the art world that there's some, I don't want to say games, because everything is so subjective and jurors have their own point of view, and of course they can pick whoever they want to do, these shows and et cetera. But I also think that there's certain games that get played in those types of arenas. I do.
Yeah, I'm sure of it. Well, we're getting towards the end of our kind of round table here today. First we can also open it up to anybody who might have questions or want to chime in, or if you have questions for each other, we can also invite that. And maybe what we can do as we close otherwise is speak more specifically maybe to the work that we have in this show. Some of you already have a little bit, and we've touched on it as well, but this show really is about work that might be a divergence from your style, or might be older work that you have since diverged from or you came back to. So I open the floor a little bit if anyone wants to speak maybe specifically to a work they have in here and they have it, or wants to ask a question of each other.
So I can be really quick about my pieces, which are basically the three that are up here. And so the theme of spring cleaning, which is such a great theme, so thank you for hosting this show, Regina. But the pieces that I chose are really all about fertility, and I've got these sort of organic egg shapes that to me are representative of that sort of mother that I've incorporated into my artwork. So that was what I was thinking. Yeah.
Always good to know what's going on in the head of the
It's
artist.
all about the egg. It's just all about the egg.
Kind of a different point, but I feel like I want to talk to Taylor because maybe not an egg, but there's like a specific reference point that has kind of a symbolic meaning in some of the work that you have here. I think the one actually right here is that Galactic Center.
Yes. So I started studying astrology, and I learned about this point. It shifts over time, but it should be at like 25 degrees of Sagittarius. So it's just this point that's actually all about like visions coming to the person that has like a certain planet in that position. So that's like pretty much like that painting. It's like, it's actually like the visionary butterfly that allows people to kind of tap into like their art style in a way, actually. So
How poignant, yeah. And your other piece also has a butterfly. Is that a very common theme? I know you talked about mushroom, alien people, and this, and
I can't say, those are actually probably the first two butterflies I've created. So it was like for this piece, I guess about 3 years ago, I was just going through this whole transformation period in my life, and I guess recently these butterflies like just came up in my head, and I'm like, I need to get them out there, and so I painted them, and that's I guess like my spring cleaning is like coming to like my transformation period in my life.
Love that. And what better symbol of transformation than a butterfly? I think so it works. Anybody else want to comment on any last things?
Yeah, I can talk about this a little bit more.
Yes.
I think the paintings also are teachings too. They're also spiritual truths. And a lot of things I'm working on now are a little bit more cognitive and literal in their meanings, and even talking about getting feedback too. Like this painting was originally commissioned by some other woman, and she gave me feedback on the end, as I was telling Taylor before, and she didn't like anything about it. She wanted to change this, and she's like, it has to be like this, can you change that color? I thought this was, I was like, no, this is the way Shiva wanted it. I'm sorry, you're not committed to buy it or anything, I'll just put it somewhere else. But really, this whole painting right here, it's a Runachala. This is the profile of the entire mountain, and even on a more subtle level, these points here, you could connect them all to create the Shiva yantra, and I think it does more on the subconscious level, and through like those alignments in our like subtle forms of awareness, I think it brings forth the inner qualities of that divinity. So even if Taylor, the only one in the world who gets this painting, mission accomplished. Yeah, I just made it for
a little happy
you.
that she didn't buy it because I wouldn't have got to see it.
No.
And I love it. I'm actually happy I sat here and I can look right across at it.
Me too.
That's so interesting. Yeah, it's time you got feedback and you said, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And let it.
I'll paint your dining room whatever color you want, but that's the way she will.
Love it. I know Nikki and Erin, you kind of spoke to some of the work that you have in this show, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to chime in on before we.
I mean, just quickly with this, like these were experimental pieces I did in college, so technically the background of these pieces are palette knives, and there's no brushwork on any of these canvases, and then it's tube painting, and I just it became expensive because you're squeezing and painting from the tube, and then the palette knife you're using like thicker layers so that you can like mold it the texture that you want. And I did for a minute like think, oh, what else could I do with this? And then I think I just kind of got distracted on something else. And this is like, I love these pieces. They're fun. I think they would make like a great background for a bedroom. But honestly, at the end of the day, I think I didn't really start stepping into my truth as an artist until I started stepping into myself as my human experience. So like, it wasn't until I was in my 30s where I was realizing like, well, where do I want to go? Like, this is what I've always wanted to do. I need to give myself that chance. And I definitely didn't know what I was doing for like the first 2 years. I knew I wanted to find a brand and more so find a brand and make money just so that I can create other spaces as an educator for people to come in and do workshops and heal with them. So the money I want isn't to buy a Lambo. The money I want is to kind of like, pay it forward, like, and create, because American education doesn't really give you the opportunity to kind of really delve into that mode of the healing arts and the healing realm. And I just think that that would be one of my biggest achievements for me to eventually get to, is to create like spaces for other people to come in and feel comfortable and heal from anything that they've been through, or just kind of build a very positive community, so that way other people can step into their light. So I think that's ultimately where I stand with like the branding and the kind of learning about myself as an artist. So thank you.
Thank you. Erin, any last words for your fellow artists, for those listening?
Sure. The work that I have here, the 2 fox pictures at least, were kind of, it's almost like a reverse. It was a time in my life where I was very solitary and I would just go out shooting all the time. I felt very connected to nature, very connected spiritually. The other piece is I bring toys that I like play in the space too, and that's a part of my creativity and that process. But these foxes are from Island Beach State Park, and this was like just like a time in my life that I felt really good about going out, making, just trying to be with foxes, which are so important to me. And they, year after year, the population just kept dwindling, and then there were absolutely no foxes there at all. They got wiped out by mange. I hear that they're like kind of making a comeback now, but it just kind of like freezes this moment in time where I felt like most aligned in my life. I love like all 3 of these pieces because it was when, I just like woke up and made art every day. And I mean, I still do, but I just felt like I knew myself so well during that time. And I like explored that through my work and through going out and interacting with the things I photographed with too. So
That's so interesting, because kind of coming from what you just said, Nikki, to me that's a great point, that sometimes our growth and our knowing of ourself and who we are is not a linear journey. And so you might have known yourself and loved yourself 10 years ago, and now you might be a completely different person and you're getting to know that person. So how beautiful to have these pieces that represent a very special and particular time in your life as an artist and your life as you, just the spiritual being that you are. And foxes, so beautiful. It's really synchronistic because there's these foxes hanging out in Bradley Beach right now. I don't know if you guys have been privy to this, and it's so beautiful, but it's also a little bit like, what do we do with this? Because now they're getting all this attention and everybody's going and photographing them and photographing them and photographing them. And what is that balance of appreciating nature, but also letting nature be, right? Yeah.
They're going to start posing for people.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the thing is, I think now the cubs are getting a little bigger, so they soon, well, I have to leave this area, but they want them to do it on their own and not because they're being approached. So hope for our foxes, right? Any questions from our audience?
I'll have a couple comments.
Yeah.
So, I am not a physical artist. I don't really make anything. I write poetry. I write other types of creative writing, and I perform. But I really could resonate with a lot of things that everybody said, and I feel like there's something very uniting about just creating stuff. And I really thank all of you for sharing, because I took a lot away from this as somebody who doesn't necessarily maybe make something physical, but still creates. And so thank you for sharing. And I totally resonate with the whole thing about the branding too. I know with my own stuff, I stopped writing for a long time, or like doing anything, because I got so stuck in my head constantly that like this isn't a brand or this isn't that, and always trying to write or make something for somebody else. And I think it has to start with what you want to express, or what, if you look in the divine consciousness, whatever it is, wants to express. So again, thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. I'm going to swing around, so stop me if you have one final thing that needs to be said. Yes.
I want to thank you, Regina, for hosting this fabulous show, and I encourage everyone to come on down to Lake Como.
Yes, there you go. Nice plug there. Yep, thank you all for being a part of this show. Or online. Yeah. So yeah, now we'll do some of the branding stuff, right? I hope you guys enjoyed our talk. We've clearly inspired some people. Duran, who's been watching and hanging out with us, says right now all he sees is words and sentences to write about. He's a writer. He's feeling, I think, very inspired by this conversation as well as our writer over here. So I think that's the beautiful thing about having a conversation like this, about getting together, is that you could be speaking to someone who's in a totally different realm, but we can connect through the things that we do, and that's why we're not all made the same, right? So I just want to thank all of you for your time and your words and your bravery and courage and humor of how we're doing things these days. And thank all of you who tuned in or might be rewatching this. And so we would, of course, invite you to come see the show physically in person in Lake Como, New Jersey. We're here on Main Street and 17th. You can come during our shop and gallery hours to view it and really see the work in its physicality, which to me is the best way. But of course, if you cannot make it in, the work is on our website, withintentions.com, where you can read about the artists. You got to know them a little bit today, but you'll see their full bios, who they are, where they come from, as well as their work, and purchase info is now on our website. So if you would like to support these artists, or if their work has really spoken to you, inspired you, and you'd like to make it your own, please do check out withintentions.com or reach out to us here or by phone, and we'll make that connection happen. Some other things coming up. Tomorrow we're going to have part 2 of our roundtable, which will be a Zoom virtual roundtable with some of the artists that couldn't make it down to our studio this weekend. So we'll have Josh HYD Ramos facilitating our conversation tomorrow between myself, Dark Reconstruction, Tali Rose Krupkin, and Kelly D. Vialba. I believe I just said that right. If I didn't, Kelly, correct me tomorrow. And so we'll have part 2 of our roundtable. You hear from some of the other artists in a similar conversation. And then it will all culminate on June 5th, which is a Saturday from 6 to 8:30, where we'll have an in-studio celebration, open house kind of style. Come see the artists. They'll bring some work. They'll bring maybe some collaborative live art making. We never know what's going to happen, but it's always awesome. So you are all invited to join us in studio, and we'll probably be live streaming from our reception as well. And other than that, I want to thank everyone who has joined us and everyone in the room for what's been a very beautiful experience. Thank you. Woo, we did it! We were live! Bye, everybody.